because, did I kick something?
No.
Sorry. Okay. Sorry. I also heard somebody just this week or so say that the section of the Bible that we call the triumphal entry should be in air quotes, the triumphal entry, because here Jesus comes riding in on a baby donkey, and it's just not the type of triumph like what you like, on a big white stallion with an army marching behind him. Yeah, it wasn't what they were expecting.
And I think that's all because, as you said, they didn't understand the prophet. They don't
Right.
they always knew a king to be.
Yes, yeah, the way they knew a king. So, and this is another interesting point that I had heard years ago. The Bible talks a lot about the earthly powers and kingdoms, and we can glean a lot about history. But we can read about the kingdoms of Egypt, of Persia, of the Greeks, of the Romans, and so forth. But what do we always see about those kingdoms? They fell, and they were always ultimately really in opposition to God's people. So, they knew about kingdoms because that Israel, if you think about where God chose his people to be, they're right at a singular point where three continents come together with Africa, Asia, and Europe. And so armies, well, trade was always going through there, but armies were always going through there because it was a vital connecting point. It was a point that everybody wanted to go through. So they were used to kings coming in and armies marching in. They knew what that was like, but they didn't expect the kind of king that Jesus was. Right. Yeah. God, can you give us a king like the other nations? Right. Yeah. Yeah, and he warned them. He said, "Well, you'll see what it's like. They'll take your sons and they'll take your daughters." Yeah. Yeah. Good thoughts. Good points. Yeah. Right. Yeah, especially those um, faithful Jews who know the scriptures even today. But yeah, it's sad for everybody who's not in the state of coming to a realization. Very, very sad. Okay, so let's get to the text. So if you recall, we've kind of mostly been sticking with the Matthew 12 passage, but this same series of events, to one extent or another, is recorded in Matthew 12, Mark 3, and Luke 11. Okay, so we'll read a section here from each of those. There's an interesting kind of inflection point where things change, and then each writer sort of goes in a little bit different directions for a while. We are going to actually from here in the Gospel Harmony that I'm following stick with Luke 11 for a little while. But before we transition completely to that, let's look at some verses here in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So if I could have maybe even four readers. Helen, do you mind, Judy? Bill, do you mind being one? And then do I have a fourth? Anna? Okay, so let's see. Helen, can you read Matthew 12, verses 46 through 50? Judy, can you read Mark 3, verses 31 through 35? And then Bill, can you read Luke 8, verses 19 through 21? And then Anna, can you read Luke 11, verses 27 and 28? So we'll be in Matthew 12, verses 46 through 50, Mark 3, verses 31 through 35. Yours will be Luke 11, verses 27 and 28. And then, Bill, yours is Luke 8, verses 19 through 21. So go ahead, Helen, when you're ready.
While Jesus was still talking to the crowd, someone told him, your mother and brother are standing outside waiting to speak to you. He replied to him, who is my brother and who are my brothers? Pointing to his disciples, he said, here are my brother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother.
Okay, thank you. Mark 3.
And Jesus' mother and brothers were standing outside. They sent someone in to call him. The crowd was sitting around him and he told them, your mother and brothers are outside looking for you. Who are my mother and my brothers? He asked. Then he looked at them, seated in a circle around him and said, here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does God's will is my brother and sister and mother.
All right, thank you. Luke 8.
Now Jesus' mother and brothers came to see him. They were not able to get near him because of the crowd. Someone told him, your mother and brothers are standing outside, wanting to see you. He replied, my mother and brothers are those who hear God's word and put it into practice.
Okay, and Anna, Luke 11.
And it happened as he spoke that a
A certain woman.
woman from the crowd raised her voice and said to him, blessed is the
Woman.
that I love you and with but he said more than that, blessed are those who hear and the word of God and
All right, thank you. So, we just got done talking about this lengthy section about the encounter with evil spirits, and now we see family members of Jesus coming to him. The harmony lines up pretty well between the Gospels, all of them making this mention about Jesus' mother and him comparing to who his family members and who his family members really are. I threw in a few extra verses from Luke there. The one passage that lines up more specifically with this is Luke records in a different section. Interestingly, if you look at the context, it's right after a story about demon possession, and Jesus casting out those demons and teaching about it. So it's possible that this type of encounter happened more than once, or it's also possible that not everything that's recorded is strictly chronological. So either way, it happened. It's just a matter of did it happen more than once. So with that being said, before I get into some of my notes and thoughts, what are some thoughts from the group about how should we take this? What did his family members come to him and how did Jesus react from that? Any thoughts? Like group, Chuck?
Well, he's saying he is the true son of man. Everyone who obeys his brothers and sisters.
Okay, the true Son of Man, identifying with all of us in a certain way like that. And you said everyone who does what is
Obeys what
obeys what his
his father commands.
Father commands. Very good. Any other thought? Yeah. So in each of these situations, there's some who even think that Jesus' family came to him at this time to sort of rescue him, to say, hey, things are getting a little tense here. Why don't we back off a little bit? Or that they were getting ready to go to a feast in Jerusalem, and so they wanted to get him to go along with them. There's different theories about why they were coming. But in any case, so Jesus here mentions
Nothing is going to stop him from doing the Father's work.
Right.
Family or no one.
Exactly. And he makes other statements where he says that you should leave the other things that might hold you back, family or work or otherwise, that are holding you back from following Jesus. Now, I think that people are trying to claim that Jesus is saying something against the physical family are trying to undermine the message. But nonetheless, we have to be prepared to answer that question. So Jesus is not saying anything about family. We know there are many verses in the Bible about the importance of family and how we should have an order of how we show our love. To God first. Family shouldn't get in the way of that, but then we need to care for our family next, before other cares of the world. And so family is vital important. So Jesus is not saying here that he didn't care about his family or that we shouldn't care about our family. As a matter of fact, we know one of the last things Jesus did on the cross was provide provision for the care of his mother. So he definitely cared about her.
And I think there's a few things here that harmonize beautifully, and I think that's when you said the other is seek ye first the kingdom of God,
Right.
and all these things will be added unto you. So it's almost essentially like prioritization.
Right.
Well, look, there's your mom, there's your brothers. Oh, you're such a great. But he says, no. It's not about that, and it's not that he belittled his family.
Right. Exactly.
He didn't. If anything, he kept them all perfectly, and he honored his
Right.
mother.
Honored his mother. Exactly.
Because he was perfect.
Exactly.
And but it's about, I think, prioritization.
Right.
The other thing is you see this fulfillment of the brothers and sisters who are my true brothers and sisters.
Mhm.
You see that fulfillment through, I think, in Acts 2.
Yes.
When you see the ecstatic in the church.
Right.
That means a lot to me coming from a broken home.
Mhm.
And, having a father who didn't have anything to do with his kids. They're more about, just a listener.
Mhm.
Than he did his own kids and wife. So but when you become a Christian, you see these things come to you.
Right.
You see really, it's just the family, we see that it's so important.
Right.
To have that in our life.
It's vitally important, and really it's part of God's provision. So whatever background we come from, even from a broken home or otherwise, God provides a family for us. And yeah, I appreciate those thoughts. Thank you.
And my mom, or is the family, I don't know where they call it, is an earthly thing. We just have heaven, that will be more. I mean, we can all love each other.
So that's a good question. So what will it be like in heaven? And I don't know the exact answer. I do know that, for instance, when David lost his son after Nathan came and talked to him, he said that he would see him again. And so we have a hope of seeing our loved ones in heaven. I don't know exactly what the structure of heaven will be like. Obviously, our first priority is going to be worshiping God. I do think we have hope to see our family members, who were faithful to the end in heaven as well. But will we live together in a household? Probably it won't be exactly like that, but it'll be better than anything we can think of. So I can't exactly answer your question. One other thing to think of or to keep in mind with these, and this comes out especially with Luke 11. So Luke 11, the woman specifically didn't just say, here's your family. She said, blessed is the womb that bore you and the breasts which nursed you. Should we be focusing our blessing on Jesus's family, including his mother? No. So, Mary had a very special place in the entire plan of God that God had, but she's not to be venerated above anybody else. So we certainly see Jesus redirecting that thought as well. Okay, so the point he was trying to make here, we've already discussed, but the spiritual bond of the family of God is stronger even than the physical bond that we have with our physical families. And we know how strong that bond can be, right? We also know how broken that can become sometimes. We can also break our bond to our family members in the church or to God. But when we are in a right relationship, that bond spiritually is even stronger than the physical family. Chuck?
I think that bond is called faith.
Faith. Yep, exactly. All right, and then Chuck hit on this point right in the beginning. I even asked him to repeat it. So what's the common theme that Jesus says in each of these verses? So they do harmonize quite well, but there's one point in all four of these sections that we read. Who is a member of the family?
Whoever does the will of the Father.
Whoever does the will of God the Father is God's child. So, a doer of the word, an observer, a faithful Christian. So, you have to do something about it. So, is hearing enough? Is belief enough? That what we hear and come to believe has to spur us for what? Action, to do things. So, yeah, it's important what we do, and ultimately being a doer of God's will help us to be His children. Okay, so with that being said, we will stop there. Like I said, we're going to pick up but continue in Luke 11 next week. So if you want to read ahead a little, I think it's verse 30, 29, 30, 33 and onward. So we'll go through the rest of Luke 11 in sections, but there's talk about the lighted lamp, and then woes of the Pharisees, woes on the teachers of the law, and we'll go through that section. Thank you all for your participation.